Welcome back. This is our last video where we are going to discuss the last tissue of the animal. So this tissue we call them a nerve tissue. So they're going to discuss this nerve tissue. So nerve tissue, they are basically made of the what? They are made up of small structure which we call a what? Which we call a neuron. So nerve tissue, they are made up of a neuron. So where do we find this nerve tissue? So nerve tissue, they are typically found in what we call CNS. CNS stands for the what? Central nervous system. So central nervous system, they make up your what? They make up your brain and also your what? Your spinal cord. So this central system is your brain and also your spinal cord. And they are responsible for what? For sending the information. These neurons are responsible for sending information between the brain, spinal cord, and the other parts of the what of the body. So this information go to the brain and spinal cord through this nerve tissue. They're responsible for this, and also you can find them outside the brain sending the information. So they are peripheral nervous system. Peripheral nervous system, they are what? They're the one that is sending the information to the brain and also to the spinal cord. So peripheral means their side neuron. They're the side neuron. Central means their center neuron. So if we have this center, this is our center. Spinal cord is also center. Peripheral is what? It is side way. That the side nerve tissue. They send information from the center to the what? Maybe to the hand, maybe to the legs, or maybe to the what? To the lungs, from the center, from the brain. That's what we call peripheral nervous system. So let's look at the basic structure of the what? Basic structure of the nerve tissue, or rather say basic structure of the what? Of the neurons. How neurons look like under the what? Under the microscope. So this is the structure of the neurons. So we have what we call sensory neurons and also the what? The motor neurons. So let's look at the structure of the neurons. So the structure of the neuron, they have this center, and this center we call them what? Cell body. A cell body. And within the cell body, there is a what? There is a nucleus. This black dot. This black dot is a nucleus. And we know the nucleus, it is the controlling center and also contain the what? The genetic material of that cell. So we have what we call the what? A dendrites. This is our dendrites. This one at the what? At the motor neurons, this tree-like structure. And this are at the sensory neurons here at the middle. So these dendrites, the function of these dendrites, it is to do what? It is to send the nerve impulse. Nerve impulse, now it is the message of the what? Of the central nervous system or peripheral nervous system of the what? Of these two systems. So these impulse are sent to the what? To the cell body through the what? Through these dendrites. So the dendrites, they send information inside the cell body. They send information to the cell body. This is what we call a dendrite. Whereas this structure called an axon. The axon, now their function is to do what? To send the information or the nerve impulse away from the what? Away from cell body. From cell body. So the information now, they move away from the cell body, through these what? Axons. So we have three types of the neurons. We have three type of neuron. We have what we call a sensory neurons. Sensory neurons, now this is a sensory neurons. Our sensory neuron now, their cell body, it is what? Is at the middle, and the dendrites are somewhere out. They are not at the cell body. they are out somewhere here within the myelin sheath, this dendrite. Remember, their function is to send the impulse away from the cell body. And their axon here, even there, they are in here at the what, at the myelin sheath. So the sensory neuron now, their function is to what, is to send impulse from what, from receptor. A receptor, it is an organ that what, that it is found within an organ, and it is responsible for the what, for censoring the what, the stimuli, for detecting the stimuli. Maybe the stimuli, the receptor can be ear to detect the sound. So they send this impulse from receptor, so to the what, to the central nervous system. So the impulse are sent, the information are sent from your from your ear to the what, to the brain. So this is the function of the sensory nervous system. So now sensory neurons, I mean to say that. So motor neuron now, what is the function of the motor neuron? So the function of the motor neuron now, it looks like this. The cell body and the dendrites, they are found in the same position, and axon now, it is found in the what, in the myelin sheath. So the now the motor neurons, they send information, impulse from what, from central nervous system. Now your brain receive the information and have to what, to respond. So they send information from the central nervous system, and then they go to what, to effector. Your brain now is telling your effector, maybe your effector is the muscle, send the muscle to what, to move, and then also to your what, to your gland to secrete something, maybe to your salivary gland to secrete something. So your brain sending information to the what, to the effector, this through the what, through these motor neurons. So what are the general function of this what? So sorry, we have another neurons that I didn't mention. We have what we call interneuron. I didn't display it in a what, in that diagram. So but these sensory interneurons, they are found between a what, they are found between sensory and also what, and motor neurons. They are found between sensory and also motor neuron. So what are the function of this nerve tissue? Why it is important to have this nerve tissue? These are important because they allow you to perceive uh stimuli, any change. Stimuli can be a what, stimuli can be the sound, can be the light, can be the heat. There's a different stimuli. So you perceive the stimuli, perceive that now there is a what, there's a light, there's a sound of the lion. If there's a sound of the lion, the sensory neurons send information to the what, to the brain, and then through the sensory neurons, and the brain will send information to the motor neurons, and the motor neurons will move information to the effector, so that you do what, you respond, you run to the muscles. Muscles say run now because you perceive the word, the stimuli, which is the sound of the lion. So the function is to allow organism to perceive stimuli and also respond to the word, to the stimuli. Thank you very much. I'm gonna see you at the next chapters.